Alrighty. So today we're going to talk about Paladins card synergy. And one of the things I want to talk about with card synergy, I did the Dead by Daylight, but that was mostly like talking about cards you run together in that. You have to realize how heavy the RPG elements are in Paladins, which is one of the reasons why I love it. I love the fact that you can make builds. I can literally spend hours sitting here looking at builds, making builds. Because there's such a deep layer to this. Not only do you have your legendary cards that you pick one of them at the start, but you can make so many different builds off of this. So, looking at this, I've got 4 different builds on Canessa, and there's 4 different legendary cards, and then you can use any legendary card. Because they're all decently viable. There are superior options. For example, Eagle Eye is currently the best option you can run on her. With the upcoming nerf, where that removes the ability to just out-and-out one-shot people, Eagle Eye is no longer the most effective. Suppression and reposition are. Steady Aim is very effective. If you have the patience for it, it's more effective. I don't necessarily have the patience for it, but that's why I prefer Eagle Eye right now. But obviously, when the patch comes and they say au revoir to Eagle Eye. But an example of card synergy. So this is an example of good card synergy. Cards like Restore and Calibrate going together. Every time you hit somebody with an AR shot, which is what I call it. I don't call it your carbine rifle. I call it your AR or your hip fire. You reduce the cooldown and you're teleported by a second. So that is very effective. Now, this stacks very well with Restore and Bob and Weave. Bob and Weave gives you bonus movement speed after you go through the teleporter, and Restore gives you bonus health when you go through the teleporter. It lets you heal up. I think that this is a great combination because it allows you to play a flank style of Canessa. She's able to rapidly move around and reposition in the environment by just hip firing. She hip fires with her AR. She uses her mines as a bit of a distraction just to get chip damage away while she's hitting you with her AR. Then she can teleport. It teleports her instantly, and she heals 50% of her health, and she gets that bonus movement speed. Then she goes right back into hitting her hip fire again to reduce the cooldown, and she can keep moving around the map like that. That is one of my favorite ways to play Canessa rather than just a static sniper. Or you can play No Man's Land. No Man's Land basically means you can hit multiple people with your suppression mines. You can have up to 4 people because you've got 2 mines, and each mine can hit 2 people. So you can have 4 people at a time affected by 75% reduced, 75% cauterize. You have double the range on them, and you can now hit them for even more damage on your sniper. 30% more damage on sniper. It's incredibly effective how you set up these type of combos. And that's an example of card synergy. One of the things I want to talk about big time is on Skye. A lot of people say Skye is really weak. Skye needs her cooldowns to be fixed. And an example of this is a lot of people run Preparation. I'm seeing Preparation come up on her, where they run a lot of preparation builds, and I just don't see the effectiveness of it, because your loadout, in my opinion, is what you run if you want to focus on cooldown reduction. There are so many good cards for cooldown reduction, and I am going to talk a bit about cooldown reduction. I'm going to repeat something from an earlier video about how to make builds, but specifically looking at Skye for right now, Preparation is not a strong card because of the fact that you have to kill an enemy to reset your cooldown. Anytime you have a card that, say, kills over eliminations, it is a much weaker card. One of the things that makes Tyra such a strong character, one of the things that makes Leanne such a strong character, one of the things that make Pip such a strong character, these are characters, and Moji, and just there are so many others that I can name off, Androxus. They have eliminations reset cooldowns. Eevee's kit would be better if she had eliminations reduce cooldown rather than kills. Same thing with Skye. So Preparation is not a great card. If you're running Preparation, you're doing it for the health, because it gives you 500 health, and you buy Kill to Heal on top of that, and basically every time you kill somebody, you can get up to 1400 health. That's a great combo. Smoke Grenade. This is a build with great synergy. So I reduced the cooldown of my Poison Bolts from 8 seconds to 3 seconds. I reduced the cooldown of my Smoke Screen from 7 seconds to 5, or from 12 seconds to 7 seconds. And then with Confound, at the level that I have it at, I now am reducing the cooldown of my poison bolts, hitting a poison bolt reduces the cooldown of smokescreen by an additional amount. Now, I could flip it where I go like this. So now I have a 4-second cooldown on my poison bolt, which is fine. But every time I hit a poison bolt, I take 2 seconds off the smokescreen. So basically, I can hit 2 sets of poison bolts in time and do that. I don't really like that combo. I prefer having the little bit extra stealth, and I prefer having the 1 second reduced cooldown. Just because of the fact that you have to look, this is another thing with card synergy, that, remember, poison bolt's effect is 4 seconds. Having a 3-second cooldown on an ability that lasts 4 seconds means you can keep spamming the same target with it over and over again until they die. Okay? That's just like Strix with the broken ass unauthorized use, because the duration is 7 seconds, and the cooldown on it is 5 seconds on unauthorized use. So, yay. Looking at, I said we were talking about Tyra. What is a good example of card synergy? Okay. Most people think that they can stack Volatile, put it at 5 points, and they can stack Primal Might, put it at 5 points, and they're done. What you don't understand is the value of getting elimination, reducing all active cooldowns by 50%. That is such an important card because of the fact that, and I run this build so much, this is my go-to Tyra build. It's called Flora's Lava. Because of the fact that I have Primal Might 5. So, looking at this build right here, what is the drawback to doing that type of a build? Well, let's look at your cooldowns. So, Firebomb has an 18-second cooldown. If you run Volatile, you are reducing your cooldown by another 5 seconds, so you go down to 13 seconds. Now, on Primal Might, you reduce your cooldown by 50% if you get an elimination. If you run Volatile with Primal Might, you have a 13-second cooldown, and that gets cut in half, and that means you're looking at a 7.5-second cooldown. Versus on Primal Might, you have an 18-second cooldown, and you get an elimination, and that goes down to 9 seconds. You are using 5 loadout points for an extra 1.5-second cooldown. Same thing. Let's look at Hunter's Mark.
Tyra.
I didn't mean to do that. Reduce the cooldown of Hunter's Mark. Okay, that, again, you can reduce that by 5 seconds. So now you have a 10-second cooldown on Hunter's Mark, and with Primal Might, you cut that down to 5 seconds. What's that? No, you can't cut that down to 5 seconds, you idiot! Because of the fact that you cannot reduce a cooldown lower than its base, half of its base value. So, Primal Might and that combo is not effective. Same thing with Firebomb, cannot drop with Primal Might below that 9 seconds. Because you can't drop a card below half of its base value for cooldowns. That's why buying Chronos at a certain point is useless. An example of this is on Genos. Genos has an 8-second cooldown on Astral Mark, and you can reduce it by a further 6, or by a further 2. And a lot of people will buy Chronos in-game and try and reduce that down further. I say no. Deal with the 6-second cooldown on it. Because of the fact that most people think that the cooldown, that cooldown reset only occurs after you've applied the cooldown to it. That's not true. On my Healing Con build, I am a bit of an idiot. People tell me that, oh, you run Never Surrender and you run Life Taker, which are the same card, basically, so you're a hypocrite. No, I don't. Here's why. So, I have the 5-second cooldown reduction on Battle Shout, and that takes it down to 10 seconds. Now, 25% of 15 seconds is about 2.5 seconds. Now, I'm running a 10-second cooldown on Battle Shout. Getting that extra elimination gives me the 2.5-second cooldown reduction. So I can get my cooldown down to 7.5 seconds off of that combo. So that is a good example of card synergy. I know how the cooldowns work, so I know that I can actually run that card at that value and get it down. I do not have to buy Chronos whatsoever on Con. I don't have to do it, because I cannot get my cooldown any lower than that. Now, an important thing to note as well, and I think this bears mentioning because I've been kind of ignoring this on purpose, cards that are based around eliminations don't factor in at all to the cooldown reduction if you stack them. So here's an example. I run Flora's Lava, so this has Primal Might level 5. Why don't I run the cooldown card in it? Why don't I run Volatile? So, I get an elimination, and I cut the cooldown by Firebomb in half, which takes 50% off the base value. So, let's say we do it right, we get a kill right off the bat. Okay, so I now have a 9-second Firebomb, but I get a second elimination in a time frame. I now take 50% off of that 9-second cooldown, so I'm at a 4.5-second cooldown. That effect does not apply if you have a base cooldown reduction card at a high enough level. If you are already reducing your cooldown by a specific amount, by a specific time frame, it goes by the percentage of the cooldown. That's why I say you don't run Volatile. And you say, well, that contradicts what you just said about Khan then, about running the tube. But the difference is, I'm not reducing the cooldown of my Battle Shout by a long enough duration for it to kick in, because I don't have the eliminations shaving off as much cooldown. If I max that card out, it's at 40, I could not get that 2 stacking benefits. But if I keep it at 25%, I'm fine. So a lot of people say, well, why can't I do the same effect on Tyra? Why can't I run Primal Might, but I run Primal Might at, say, 20%, where it falls under there? Because it's just simply not as effective. Tyra is a damage dealer. Her whole benefit is dealing damage. When you start looking at ways of cheating the system to get these little extra teeny tiny things out, rather than actually learning that the more damage you deal, the faster you actually reset your cooldowns on her, it's kind of stupid. Like, you're a damage dealer. Stop trying to pinch pennies on cooldowns and actually kill people so that you can get your cooldowns faster. And if you need your cooldown, this is the thing I love. If you need a cooldown to be 0, if you need that ability in order to kill somebody, fuck you. Stop playing the character or get gut. And I hate to say that, but it's true. It's like, Leon is a character that I understand if you need that. She has relatively long cooldowns, but she is able to reduce her cooldown by 50%. Now, why do I run these cards in here as fillers? It's because of the fact of the matter is, you are able to constantly hit. Heraldry, at this value, does not reduce enough cooldown for it to not kick in with Inheritance. Swift Jade and Eagle's Emerald are both decent filler options. Being with Swift Jade, every time I hit somebody with Grace, which is your slide auto aim, I'm able to take a second off of the cooldown on Valor. If I hit 4 people with this build on my slide, I reset the cooldown on my Valor, which means I can then hit my Valor and fuck everybody over. And then Eagle's Emerald is important because every time I hit a primary fire shot, I'm now reducing the cooldown of Valor. Now, a lot of people say that the 0.2 second isn't very good, but if you hit 50% of your shots, you've basically taken a second off of Valor. You have a fast rate of fire, and you have an accurate, precise weapon. There's no reason why you shouldn't run a combination of cooldown reductions like this. Another example is looking at snipers. So I have Heraldry. So remember, this is going to be run with Eminence. So I have 4 seconds off of Presence, which drops me down to 11 seconds. This is another example. Hitting an enemy with Presence reduces the cooldown by 7.5 seconds. So I'm looking at basically a 3-second cooldown if I can consistently hit that one ability. And it deals bonus damage. It's a great combination to run. The reason why this card is effective with Inheritance, I could run Inheritance at 5 if I wanted to, is because of the fact that this has a caveat to it. You have to hit the enemy with Presence, so it is a bit of a high risk, high reward. So the cooldown block, or the cooldown cock block, only comes into effect if you don't hit the enemy. If I had Inheritance at 5 and I didn't hit the enemy, it wouldn't activate. But because it is a skill based activity, I have to hit an enemy to get the cooldown reduction on it. So that takes priority on my aim. Another example of looking at good card synergy is at Barrack. Looking at the builds you can run with Barrack. This is a very strong build. Standing near your turret heals you for 225 per second. Standing near your turret heals it for 200 per second. And this is a build that I've worked very hard on because of the fact that you want to get these values pretty decent to each other. I'm really sick of this card. This card used to be a strong card. I just don't see the value of it anymore. Yeah. Alrighty. Looking at this build right here, the thing you have to realize, and this goes towards the synergy that I'm talking about. You notice how I actually haven't run this build in a while. I've mostly run the Barricade build or the Bowling Ball build. I haven't run these two builds in a while on Barrack because of the fact that I don't know why I was messing up, and it came down to card synergy. Having the Forged Alloy, which basically increases the health of your turret by 200, we'll round up. Standing near your turret heals it for 200 per second, and standing near your turret heals you for 200 per second. It's all built around that synergy. You have these two turrets, you have these two healing stations. You heal your turrets heal you, and your turrets have more health, so that they can withstand it longer. That is incredible synergy. And then One Man Scrap, when your turn is destroyed, you heal for 400 over 5 seconds, is another important thing to run. Another thing that I want to talk about card synergy is when you are running stacking ability values. And what do I mean by this? A lot of people, when they are going for, say, a reload card, will max it out. For example, Stun Damba. Snake Pit 5, 25%, yeah! Or they'll go with, Androxus. Yeah, Androxus, they want Gunslinger, see? See? Can't run that build. No, can't run that build. That build is stupid. Actually, I need to tweak this build. Shit. But I need to take this out. Put the Watchful in. I'll take the pointer off. I'll go like that. There we go, there we go. See, I keep forgetting I keep taking Watchful out. Like, Watchful keeps coming in and out for me on Androxus, and I don't know why. But, okay. Here's something new important. So if you go in-game, Deft Hands, the item Deft Hands, stacks in values of 20%. Tier 1 is 20%, Tier 2 is 40%, Tier 3 is 60%. You cannot go higher than 60% reduced reload speed. That's important to know. If you buy Quick Draw if you run Quick Draw at this level right here, and you buy Deft Hands 1 and Deft Hands 2, you don't have to buy Deft Hands 3 because the values will stack. However, if I have that card at 25%, and I try that strategy, the Deft Hands 2 will take precedence over Quick Draw, and this entire build is for nothing. And the reason why is because you're stacking over the amount. So you have to realize, if I'm buying Quick Draw, if I'm running Quick Draw, or if I'm running Snake Pit in-game, right? And I decide I'm going to go with, if I'm running Snake Pit, just as an example, and I'm going to buy Deft Hands off the bat on Damba, I'm now rocking 40% reload speed off the bat. I'm rocking Deft Hands 2. There are some days I don't even need Deft Hands 3 on Damba. When I'm in my groove, baby. So, you don't need to have Deft Hands. You don't need to have Deft Hands 2 in that situation. But if I have that card at 25%, and I buy Deft Hands 2, I'm going over that limit. So the Deft Hands 2 now takes priority. That's an example of when I see people that are running a Death and Taxes Leon, and then they buy Cauterize. You cannot stack over 100%. So buying Death and Taxes, getting Death and Taxes, and buying Cauterize means you now have 30% reduced healing on your target. Plain and simple. You're wasting your credits. It's the same thing on Sky. On Debilitate, I run enemies hit by Poison Bolts receive 75% reduced healing for 3 seconds, and I buy Cauterize on that. But why? But you can't stack the two. Well, here's why. Enemies hit by the Poison Bolts receive 75% reduced healing. But my Poison Bolts don't count as a weapon attack. So the Cauterize that I'm applying with Poison Bolts is not cauterized that it does not stack with cauterized I apply in-game. If I hit somebody with cauterized, that applies another 30% on top of it, which is 100% cauterized. So if I hit somebody with a poison bolt and spray them with primary fire, because by the way, you cannot completely apply 100% cauterized. The most you can apply is like 95%. It's like they're gonna get like maybe 2 health per second from a fucking Genos heal. Just as an FYI. They're gonna get some heal off a Genos heal, just in a situation like that, or off a Pip heal. But it's gonna be like so small, they're not even gonna notice it. But that is an example of how you can apply those benefits. Another example is movement speed. I think this is critical to know. Remember that values stack in levels, in tiers. If you look at Fernando as an example, I have my Fireball build. Enemies hit by Fireball receive 60% reduced healing for 3 seconds. That applies to my Fireball. So that is, that's tier 2 caught on a Fireball. I could go to 75%, but it's wasting a point. This is what I talk about economizing when you look at card synergy. If I ever talk about you need to economize your build, it's because you can get that extra point, but there's no value. Most people are used to working around Caught 2. Most people are used to working around Wrecker 2. Things of that nature. There's no reason to run that build if you're buying Cauterized. You can run that build if you're buying Cauterized because you're already used to working around Caught 2, and your Fireball just gives you a long-range way to apply it. And this allows me to now have an extra point into Looks That Kill, where hitting an enemy with Fireball recharges more ammo, so I can keep firing. And by having the cooldown at the level that I do with Incinerate, I can hit my Fireball faster. So technically, I have an infinite ammo clip on this build, because I just hit the Fireball, which recharges ammo, which lets me fire long enough until the Fireball on the cooldown comes back, so I can hit him with the Fireball, which recharges ammo, and it's the circle of life, only for Fernando. It's the circle of life. But yeah. That is an example of good card synergy. Another thing you want to talk about, is it on here? Yeah. Now, this is important to know. You cannot reduce the cooldown on resilience lower than 90%. If you run a build that has 70% reduced crowd control in it, you cannot reduce that any further, basically. Because if you buy resilience off the bat, you get the effect of the resilience 1, not any card in your loadout. So Andy Bomb King right here, you don't buy resilience. 70%, you're halfway between resilience 2 and 3, eat it. Now, if you're like me, we'll go back to Fernando. Now I have Immovable Object. That is 56% crowd control reduction. I can buy Resilience 1. And I can get 86% crowd control reduction out of the gate. There you go. That's an example of that. But what you have to realize, if you're running a card like that, if I'm running that card at that level, there's no reason for me to run Resilience, though. Because of the fact that, like, I already have 50% reduced crowd control. That card at level 3 is garbage, because you're not reducing it by even 50%. Same thing at level 2, obviously, but I mean, at level 3, you're basically getting Resilience 1. There's no point in doing something like that. Another thing with card synergy to talk about is good healing cards. Now, Genos is the only healer that I will run a build that heals you while you are healing allies. It's actually Genos and Pit, my apologies. Because of the fact that you have to look at Genos' heal. Genos heals allies for 220 health per second. And on this build, you heal yourself for 200 health per second for the same duration. So I'm basically healing myself for the same value that I'm healing everybody else for. Now, if you were to look at Damba, Damba has a card that does a similar effect, but he can only heal for 75 health per second, even though he heals his allies for 280 per second. Another example is Saris. Saris has a card that allows her to heal herself for 350 health per second, even though she heals allies for 1,000 health per second. It's not worth running that much healing. Another example, I'm gonna go to Furia. Furia can heal herself for 525 over 3 seconds. There's two problems with that. A, it's over 3 seconds. It's not she's healing herself for 525 per second for 3 seconds. Which that would be admittedly kind of broken and I would run that card. This is a duration. So you have to look. She is legitimately healing herself for about 150, 175 health per second. My math is off. It's early in the morning. I need more coffee. On that note, that coffee is way too strong. Like, dude. Oh my god. I like strong coffee. I don't like that. I don't know anybody that could drink that coffee besides me. In fact, I'm gonna have some more. I actually like that now. It's nasty up front, but it's got a nice finish to it. So anyways, we're done about Fury. Enough with the coffee. Fuck you, coffee. So you look at the healing effect on this. You have to realize, though, she heals her ally for 1,000 up front and another 500 over time. I get healed for about half of that burst heal over 3 seconds. It's not worth it. If I'm not getting equivalent value to the healing I put out, I'm not going to run that card. Grover is an AoE healer. He doesn't have any real way to heal himself. Grok sits in his own heal most of the time, so you don't have to worry about that. Ying can get healed by herself. And then you look at Pip. Pip has 2 cards he can run. One is Moxie, which is a very important card. That's another thing with card synergy. Receive 10% increased healing is always going to be better than the cards that are receive 5% increased healing, because of the fact that maxing that card out doesn't give you more than Rejuvenate 2. I can run Moxie with Rejuvenate and absolutely be insane. I have a build on Moji. This is my, I believe it's the trap card build. Yes. So this is 50% increased healing below 50% health. Now, this is the other thing. I buy Rejuvenate 3 with this, and I get 80% increased healing for below 50% health. A Genos heal can get me to full health. Like, fast. This is if I have to play a bit of a tank Moji where I need the extra healing. This is an FYI. But looking at a character like Pip, one card that you can run is Gift Giver. If you max this out, healing an ally, this is a way that you can get Mega Potion applied to you. If you run Moxie and Gift Giver, oh my god. Basically, healing an ally is the same as healing you. And if you have Reload in there and Medicinal Excellence, that is a very effective build. Now, I actually don't have... No, I do have Moxie as a filler in this. I unfortunately have to run Sturdy on Pip because I don't like the fact that your weapon kills you. It's my weapon. It shouldn't be killing me. Thank you very much. I use you. You don't kill me. If I could run that card on Dredge and Willow, I would. It's like, for me, it's like, okay, so Fernando has a fucking flamethrower that doesn't burn my hand when I use it by overheating. Like, if they added an overheat function to Fernando, I would actually like that, by the way. To be honest, I would like Formidable if, instead of Formidable giving you a way to heal yourself, I would prefer if Formidable was reworked. So, your flamethrower no longer consumes ammo. It has an infinite ammo duration. However, when your charge meter fills up, you begin applying your damage over time effect to yourself until you stop and let the cooldown go down on it. Because as Fernando, you kind of have to pace that. And so you could actually use that card with looks that kill. So hitting your fireball would then recharge ammo, which would reduce the heat meter on it. I would love if they did that. That would be such a technical element. And it would give you a secondary damage option away from Scorch. Brainstorm! I actually want to go out on that high note now. Yeah, I do. As much as I want to talk more about card synergy, I'm like so happy about that. Hi-Rez, if you watch this video, do it. I also have 32 champions that are fully developed, by the way, so I could be making my own game if I wanted to, but just take these characters, please. If you're going to keep introducing new characters, don't introduce that new mage character with the switching styles and the Makoa dragon ult. Don't do it. Take one of my characters. Bye.